What's up, everyone? This week's Pokemon is a literal pile of sludge. That's right, it's muck. And honestly, there's not much else to say about Muck, unless of course you watched the first season of the anime, where Muck was the leader of a bunch of Grimer that was causing a lot of problems for the power plant of Gringy City. And lo and behold, Ash actually catches this one, and then Muck and its horrible stench is with Professor Oak for the rest of the episodes, until of course it beats that outrageously strong Bellsprout, which one-shotted Pikachu. Yeah, I don't know, the anime doesn't make sense. Anyways, let's not muck around and pose the question, how good was Muck actually? And in this video, we'll be talking about these competitive formats. Unfortunately, despite its menacing appearance, Muck was pretty bad and overused of its debut generation. As we all know, Psychic types are one of the most powerful types in this generation, and Poison types hate those. Not to mention that its really meager stats did not help it deal with the normals or the rock and ground types, to say nothing of the occasional Gengar. The only really interesting thing it has is Explosion, but there exist many better Exploders that can actually go toe-to-toe with things, and don't require to be blown up to be useful. And those Exploders are actually able to hurt the few things that resist or are immune to explosion. So yeah, overuse is pretty lost for Muck, but it was a nice choice in underuse at the very least, where it didn't have to constantly worry about death at every corner and could dish out some damage while taking some hits. In the following generation, however, Muck's special stat actually split. During 2nd Gen Special Split, Muck actually received a meaty base 100 special defense that went alongside its enormous HP to make for quite the tanky Pokemon. And just to give you an idea of how tanky it is, Starmie's super effective Stab Psychic only has about a 20% chance to 2-hit KO after leftovers, though Muck obviously wasn't an impenetrable wall, as it was more so an offensive Pokemon that didn't mind taking a hit, which its teammates vastly appreciated, especially if it came from something nasty like Machamp, as it could actually dish out some damage for its teammates to capitalize off of. It wasn't a sweeper, of course, but rather a team player, and like everything else in this generation, it got Curse, and used Curse alongside the then physical move Sludge Bomb, with Fire Blast and Explosion to accompany the set for great success. Steel types wanted nothing to do with it thanks to its fire coverage, so it was basically able to spam its Stab Sludge Bomb and spread poisons on things that might resist it, such as Tyranitar, Rhydon, Marowak, and Mischievous, none of whom appreciated poison at all, barring the occasional rest variants, who still did not appreciate being made to rest, as that would make them more vulnerable and give easier opportunities to opposing Pokemon. Sludge Bomb was a great move to throw around, as even Gengar, who is immune to the poisons and quadruple resisted Sludge Bomb, could not hurt Muck very significantly at all, and would slowly be eroded by Fire Blast, especially with spikes down. As for weaknesses though, Nidoking was immune to poison as well, and could actually hurt Muck back, but that's where Explosion came in, with Muck tanking a hit and then removing a key threat, just as it specializes in, with its teammates capitalizing. The removal of Nidoking, for example, would assist Machamp, Tyranitar, or Raikou greatly. Muck also scares the daylight out of stall teams, since it switches in forever and can really mess up their defensive core by breaking the right hole, and it tends to start a domino effect. Its poisons could waste heal bells from Miltank or Blissey, since after all they only had 8, and since Miltank's growls were tasked to deal with curse users, Muck could sometimes target it with Explosion and remove a significant part of the opponent's team, one that was assigned several duties, which it could no longer do because it got blown up, allowing the opposing team to really take advantage. Some variants even ran Giga Drain, since it didn't really need the curse boost to take hits and take something down with Explosion, and Muck could lure in and destroy Rhydon and Golem with Giga Drain, thus making it an even more effective wall breaker. And like I've said many times already, when in doubt, it could explode, right in the face of the threatening electric types or Vaporeon. Because of all this, overall, GSC Muck was a very good Pokemon with a defined significant role in overused. But unfortunately, in the 3rd generation, Muck lost out to its rival Weezing, who funnily enough it'd been significantly better than for the prior 2 generations. But this time Weezing just gained Levitate and Will-O-Wisp, leaving Muck to unfortunately be crippled by Earthquakes, Spikes, and Arena Trap, thus making it pretty awful in overuse. However, in underuse, it's excellent. It had several great sets like the Mix set, which paired its signature Explosion and Stab Sludge Bomb with Ice Punch for Gligar, and either Hidden Power Ghost for, well, Ghost types, or Grasp for Quagsire. It's got Substitute and Focus Punch, which made use of Muck's 101 HP substitutes, tanking Seismic Tosses, and allowing it to dish out major hurt to Aggron and Kangaskhan. Curse a la GSC, except it could use Rest to go for sweeps, but of course use Explosion sometimes, and Choice Band, which had scary immediate power on its Sludge Bombs, and whose Focus Punches were utterly devastating if one's prediction game was on point that day. Muck was a nice part of underuse that contributed to the pleasant, colorful, unique blend of options the metagame offered. offered. It's also worth mentioning that Muck hilariously had a niche in Ubers. Thanks to Sticky Hold and a Toxic immunity, it completely countered Deoxys' defense and could use the free turn to try and land a poison on something else, as nailing Groudon, Kyogre, or a Laddie-twin would be pretty useful. Muck's great special bulk also meant it could tank a ton of really powerful hits and then explode, so that's pretty cool. Now on to Diamond and Pearl. Overuse was far beyond Muck's grasp at this point, with bigger and stronger offensive threats and bigger and fatter walls everywhere. So yeah, let's just talk about underuse. Unfortunately there as well, things that seriously impede Muck are much more common now, like Registeel, Rhyperior, and Steelix, who are all very common, very powerful, and didn't care much for Muck's antics. Thus, if it wanted to make offensive progress itself, it was pretty much obligated to run Focus Punch, whether on a substitute set or on a Choice Banded set. Luckily, Muck had plenty of points of entry, such as Chansey, Venusaur, and Milotic, so it had several opportunities to dish out major damage. It also gained the monstrously powerful Gunk Shot as stab, which had a meager accuracy but had a 30% poison chance, just like the Sludge Bombs of old, and was incredibly hard to switch into unless you were a Steel type. Even ground types didn't want to take one because it hit so hard and could poison them. And of course, it also had the more accurate and weaker, yet still powerful option, Poison Jab, which also had the nasty 30% poison rate, so it was really up to the player. Some players even opted to use a tank set, which is basically the sub punch set minus the substitute part, relying on prediction rather than safety to open up a fourth move slot. Ice Punch, Payback, Pain Split, and Explosion were all good choices. Muck also effectively used its Sticky Hold to block Trick from Choice Mismagius and Rotom. Its specially defensive Curse set is more what Muck is known for, but these other sets were more effective in underuse, since the Cursor would rarely sweep, and it usually wasn't worth dedicating your team to try and pull that off, as Muck could do damage more efficiently in other ways. And while Muck was solid in underuse, its relatively low usage did see it drop to never used, where it was a staple of the metagame, most notably being able to check the terrifying Charizard. And of course, power creep meant that not only were Overuse's weather antics hilariously out of Muck's reach, it couldn't even fit into underused, but it does have a niche in the new rarely used. And while its traditional antics aren't necessarily bad, they were outclassed by new meaty Pokemon, such as Druddigon. However, what Muck could do that nothing else could was fill a plethora of important roles on stall teams. It could absorb or rather block Trick while still being a defensive Pokemon. It also absorbs Toxic Spikes, meaning the stall team doesn't have to scramble to spin them away. Not to mention it counters Rotom Mow, who's a huge threat in rarely used. And finally, it can use its move pool to bait and destroy dangerous Pokemon, such as Escavalier, Durant, and Quillfish. Many Pokemon that switch into it, such as Slowking, also hate Toxic, and Muck thus excels at spreading it. The exception would be Sigilyph, who doesn't mind Muck at all, but pair Muck with a Spirit Tomb, and Sigilyph, alongside other Psychics, such as Uxie, Mesprit, and Gallade, will be taken care of. And yeah, this niche was pretty narrow and specific, but it was still a niche regardless. But of course, never used was Muck's real home though. Here it used its new ability, Poison Touch, which gave all of its contact moves 30% to poison, even Ice Punch. This also meant its Poison Jab or Gunk Shot essentially had a 51% chance to poison. It could also effectively use Shadow Sneak for priority, giving it even more depth to its game, now that it could somewhat circumvent its speed, as it could even use it as it was about to be KO'd to leave the opponent with a poison before going down. With coverage in Ice Punch, Fire Punch, and Brick Break, it was incredibly hard to counter, and it was useful defensively. Overall, it was a great never used Pokemon. Alright, on to Gen 6. Insert obligatory comment about OU, UU, and even RU now being too much for Muck here. But this time, it wasn't even very good and never used. It faced fierce competition in Garbodor, Skuntank, and its rival Weezing, who all had much more distinctive niches and were more consistently useful. Thus, Muck found itself at the bottom of the sludge barrel in PU. Well, at least it has a tier for its stench too. Luckily, it was actually pretty solid there. It was able to tank and threaten popular Pokemon such as Cacturne, Clefairy, and Rotom Frost, as it could use Assault Vest to become a truly excellent offensive defensive Pokemon. It could even use Sticky Hold to protect against knockoff, although of course Poison Touch was really hard to pass up on. Choice Band was also a fierce option, and Curse, Rest, and Sleep Talk variants were extremely hard to take down, provided it was paired with Probopass to remove the steals that were immune to Poison Jab, or paired possibly with a Pursuiter like Matang or Dust Noir to handle Psychics like Kadabra and Mr. Mime. Overall, Muck was pretty down low this generation, but it at least made an impact where it eventually settled. And finally, Sun and Moon. Muck was blessed with a boost this generation, an entire Alolan form. Its regular variant dropped down to PU again, where it was once more a solid Pokemon with its usual tricks, being able to check threats such as Lurantis and Clefairy while posing a setup threat that separated itself from the likes of Type Null and Spiritomb via Sticky Hold to prevent any item trickery, pun intended. However, it was the Alolan variant's time to shine. Poison and Dark typing making it a Psychic Killer instead of Psychic Weak, Stab, Pursuit, and Knockoff that can poison? Yes, please, please. It's got a minor niche in overuse, using Assault Vest to check all of the Tapus, both Greninjas, Volcarona, Clefable, and Mega Alakazam, but it tends to be hard to fit on a team and can struggle with common threats such as Heatran, Zygarde, and Mega Mawile. It's not bad though, and absorbing Toxapex's toxic spikes is always incredibly useful. Muck's useful on some stall teams too, as they usually struggle with Tapu Lele and Hoopa Unbound, as the best those teams can do is have the occasional Magearna, and that can easily be destroyed by some tricks the opposing Pokemon can pull. But Muck takes no nonsense, and dumpsters both Lele and Hoopa. Muck was even useful in Ubers for a time, yet again. It completely crushed the Moon mascot Lunala, and could assist with Deoxys attack, especially those vicious variants paired with Tapu Lele for terrifying Psycho Boost. Hitting an incoming Primal Groudon with poison was also no joke. However, this nice little niche didn't last, as Ultra Sun and Moon brought Necrozma Duskmane, which ruled the metagame. But at least in the early days of Sun and Moon Ubers, Muck was a pivotal part of many stall teams. It's also quite excellent in underuse, as it's able to spread poison with vicious ease, making even Crocodile wary about switching in. It's got fire punches for steals that are immune to it, such as Scizor and Klefki, knocks off everything except the Z move Cobalion, and this is particularly nasty for Rhyperior and Swampert, especially when Muck gets insanely easy switches into Blissey, and most notably with Assault Vest, it utterly destroys Latias, one of the best Pokemon in the tier. Shredding Chandelure and Celebi is great too, and while it doesn't one-hit KO them, it leaves a sizable mark on other Pokemon such as Nihilego and Rotom-Mow. And with that, Alolan Muck is solidly underused, but it had nice niches in the higher tiers. And as you may have noticed, we haven't mentioned VGC up until this point, and that's because regular Muck is nowhere to be found. But in VGC 2017, Muck was known as the Tapu Killer, as it utterly dominated all four of them with its Poison Jab, and was unaffected by psychic moves from Pokemon such as Tapu Lele, thanks to its new Dark typing. Alolan Muck is a pretty nice weapon to have when the Tapus are so prominent in the meta. But of course, that's not the only reason why it's a great Pokemon. With its new Stab knockoff, it's a nuisance to things that really need their item, like Eviolite on Porygon 2. Though this time around, VGC players utilized the Gluttony ability as opposed to its other abilities, which allowed Alolan Muck to utilize the Figgy Berry to heal half of its HP much earlier than usual, which was a decent form of recovery for it. Muck's low speed even allowed it to function on or against Trick Room teams, sometimes even running Curse to boost its attack stat. Now the aforementioned knockoff, Poison Jab, and of course Protect is pretty standard, but there are other interesting variations of Muck with sets, including some with Taunt, some with Imprison to block opponents from protecting, or Shadow Sneak to finish off low opponents. Some even ran Gunk Shot, Assurance, or even Flamethrower for Kartana. Dealing with Alolan Marowak was also a huge boon and served to greatly assist Celesteela, cause you know, it's a dark type now. And despite Muck not appreciating Earthquakes, with its only type weakness being ground, and its attack stat is sometimes to be desired, it was still a great Pokemon for VGC 2017, and was almost always in the top 15 usage stats. And thanks to all of these perks, Muck had a ton of usage in 2017. And of course, this means it has a lot of placements, and you can see all the notable ones we found in the description down below. For now, we're gonna highlight some of its highest ones. Sage and Park used Alolan Muck to reach second at the regionals in Busan, Korea. Paul Chua used one to get first place at the Georgia regionals. Aaron Cybertron Zhang reached first with one at the Melbourne Challenge, and also got second with one at the One Nation of Gamers Invitational using a Shadow Sneak variant. Flavio Delpedio reached first with a Muck at the Sao Paulo Challenge. However, at Worlds, Alolan Muck unfortunately seemed to drop off, with the highest placing one being the 6th place finisher from Argentina, Sebastian Escalante, using Muck on a rain team alongside Buzzwole. And that's it. So how good was Muck actually? Other than its nice niche in the second generation of overuse, for a long time it was thought of as a purely lower tier Pokemon, but at least it actually fit nicely there. Most poison types have a secondary typing, like grass or water, which let them fit into overuse, but unfortunately pure variants are more fit for the lower tiers. Muck pretty much exemplified this, as it fell lower and lower as the generations went on, though it was never truly a bad Pokemon. It just had tough competition. Its new Alolan form in the 7th generation form breathed some new life into it, as it not only saw some use in overuse, but also in Ubers, before settling into an excellent role in underuse. And of course that form had so much usage in VGC, so Muck was pretty alright when it's all said and done, so at the very least it's not as worthless as a pile of sludge. Thanks for watching everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. Shoutouts to the patrons as always, and to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. Have a nice day, everyone.